come into the base without even being searched or checked because they're afraid that somebody might recognize him, his identity might be compromised.
People have been too quick to blame Jennifer, and that I reject totally, because there were many people looking at this operation. People that the source was good. There were other pressures coming from the White House and elsewhere saying, pursue. You need to do this. But I'm sure there were voices out there saying, maybe not. Maybe we should slow down. That happens in many operations. Didn't happen in this one.
So they set up a plan to get him through the checkpoints without being even looked at by the guards. He gets further into the base, goes to the second checkpoint, goes to the third checkpoint, and gets all the way into the innermost part of the base, the inner sanctum. There are a total of 14 CIA officers lined up to meet him.
With this to come to you for unexpected ways.
Valerie gets out of the car on the wrong side, and he's chanting the words in Arabic, "God is great." Before anybody could stop Valerie, he fumbles for his detonator.
Well, this is for you. Smartwatch. Little heaven. Kill as much as I can. You will be sent to the hell.
Valerie hits the switch, blows himself up, and there's a terrific explosion that kills almost everybody who's within direct sight of Valerie at the time of the explosion.
We heard the explosion, but when we saw the smoke coming up from exactly where I knew Chapman was, that I knew the base had been hit. We knew that someone had gotten inside the base, and we knew that it was the agency that had been hit, and we knew it was bad. By the time we got on the scene, it was an ugly scene. There were parts everywhere. The conventional unit that was there landed the helicopter right in the courtyard and evac as many of the wounded as possible. He said Jen didn't make it. Our logistics chief that we had worked with to close the base on a daily basis didn't make it, and some of our case officers never made it even back to they died on the scene.
When you do this, and do this, eventually you lose one. And we lost really good people.
When I heard that Jennifer was in Coast, I was shocked that she was taken out by Bin Laden. I mean, it just seemed so surreal that would happen to her. After she spent so many years trying to prevent another tragedy by him, he in effect had anything to do with her death. It's incredibly discerning.
There was some criticism of the agency. Frankly, I understand that. But you don't get a bod without Coast. An agency that's not willing to take the risks that were evident at Coast, which unfortunately ended tragically. That agency not willing to do that. It is not an agency to do what it had to do to build that trail all the way to a bottom line. And in fact, some of the human beings who built the trail to a bottom line were actually killed at Ghost. This kind of Team America and the hunt for bin Laden and the fight against Al-Qaeda. And there is powerful connective tissue between the two events.
بالنسبة لبن لادن مثل هذه العملية الكبيرة الناجحة النوعية، ومن بين هذه النسب هي عملية هبام، لأن كانت استهدفت العسكريين وهي أهم فئة لدى تنظيم القاعدة، واستهدفت أيضا عناصر من العسكريين مهمين أيضا وليسوا كأي عناصر، اللي هم عناصر مهمين يعني أهميتهم عالية. بأنه مهما كانت قوة الأجهزة المطاردة المقاتل والعنصر تنظيم القاعدة إنه لن يقتل إذا لم يخطأ. ما هو الخطأ الذي ارتكبه بن لادن في نظري حتى قتل؟ حب السلطة. فكان يرسل المراسلين باستمرار إليه من بن لادن إلى عطية الله ومن عطية الله إلى بن لادن، أنه أراد أن يبقى دائما في الصورة وأن يكون متواصلا معه، بينما كان بإمكانه أن يبقى سنة كاملة بلا مراسل بلا لكن بن لادن الذي كان بجدياته الفكرية أو أيديولوجيته الفكرية الجهاد والموت وكذا، لم يكن يسعى للموت. وهو يقول أن الموت جميل ورائع في سبيل المبادئ والأهداف، ولكن في حقيقة الأمر هو لم يسعى للموت، حاول التشبث بالحياة حتى آخر لحظات من حياته، ولذلك عمل كل الأسباب ليبقى حيا.
To bin Laden makes complete sense to me. It was based on all of these years of experience working with a very tight-knit group of people who really cared about this and supported each other. We've invented the technique that works, and it's the technique that got bin Laden in the end. I got a call from another former colleague, and he said, turn on the news. You know, I was at home. Turn on the news, the president's going to make an announcement. And I had a feeling that it's been a good day at the office.
Good evening.
And then finally, It's him. They got him. They got him finally. That was really something.
That it needs to understand what it is we just went through. The really key part is not how to do these operations. The thing to understand is why are the people that we are fighting doing what they're doing? Why is the enemy the enemy? If you don't understand why they're doing it, it's very difficult to stop. We don't speak the language enough. We don't understand the culture enough. We haven't taken the time to not be blind, deaf, and dumb in areas of the world that matter to us. Situation again.
The Biden achieved, spreading his ideology beyond what he probably expected it to. How do you kill an ideology? Killing one person doesn't end that.
I don't want it to continue. I hope it stops. I hope we don't live in a world where you deal with an adversary that loses respect for the sanctity of human life. But look, this isn't a picture from a video arcade. This is a human being who has a family and a soul. So when you confront that, what are you going to do? There are philosophical debates you can have, but at the end of the day, the question is, are you going to move or not? Yes or no? Go or no go? That's it. Isolated incident. This is an isolated incident. Like the police shooting of Samir Rice in Cleveland, or Dante Parker in San Bernardino County, or Kendrick McDade in Pasadena, or Armand Bennett in New Orleans. Well, the problem, Stewart's facts were flat out wrong about Dante Parker. Now the DA in the county where Parker died is slamming John Stewart. He was so wrong about those facts. They did not shoot him. They tasered him after he had committed a burglary and he was attempting to assault a deputy sheriff. We lead the state in California in officers being killed in the line of duty. Why isn't anybody protesting and marching about that? I used to work out there. They do a great job. Joining us right now with his reaction, Detroit Police Chief James Craig. Chief, this bothered you too, didn't it?
It did. I really felt that the district attorney's comments were spot on. Our officers go out each and every day. They risk their lives. They're met with danger, and yet what I think should happen is the narrative should expand. I'm not suggesting in any way that, we shouldn't be transparent and address, deadly force incidents, because that's how we build trusting relationships in our community, and we've done that, especially here in Detroit. But the narrative needs to expand.
In what way?
Well, it needs to expand. We need to talk about the attacks on officers, the fatal shootings where officers are struck by gunfire and serving our community. For example, this past weekend, had an officer who was met with a mentally ill person
The CIA has looked at it, they've
prevent.
studied it a lot. They have nothing definitive. And the fact is, maybe he did, maybe he didn't. If you look at Iran, what they've done, they've been a bad actor. You look at what's happening in Syria with Assad, with hundreds of thousands of people killed. We are with Saudi Arabia. We're staying with Saudi Arabia.
Actually, according to reporting from this network and other networks and other newspapers, the CIA has made an assessment and has drawn a conclusion, and they believe that the Crown Prince, MBS, was behind the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. The president was not saying nothing correct there. Within minutes, there was also some strong reaction from many of his Republican colleagues. The chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Senator Bob Corker, responded, "I never thought I'd see the day a White House would moonlight as a public relations firm for the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia." And one of the president's most outspoken critics, Republican Senator Jeff Flake, wrote, "Great allies don't plot the murder of journalists, Mr. President." Senator Rand Paul responded, "I'm pretty sure this statement is Saudi Arabia first, not America first. I'm also pretty sure John Bolton wrote it." And Republican Senator Lindsey Graham tweeted, "I fully realize we have to deal with bad actors and imperfect situations on the international stage. However, when we lose our moral voice, we lose our strongest asset." Joining me now, NBC News national political reporter Josh Letterman and Washington Post foreign columnist and associate editor of the Washington Post, David Ignatius. David is also an MSNBC contributor. David, you work at the Washington Post. You knew Jamal Khashoggi. The president's reaction yesterday saying that our oil deals and our arms deals are more important than a human life. What is your reaction?
Jamal was my colleague and my friend, and I was shocked to see the president in such a cold-blooded way put his definition of U.S. national interests ahead of values. This was a horrible crime. As President Trump himself has said, this was somebody who was lured to the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, killed and dismembered. You can't think of a more grisly situation. I could understand if the president said Saudi Arabia is our ally, King Salman is our longtime friend, but to explicitly say, he may know, he may not know, we don't really care, that's the part that shocked me.
It's also him using not correct numbers in order to justify this. He's talking about a $450 billion arms deal. It's a $14.5 billion arms deal. The rest of that money is coming in IOUs that we may never see, David.
So the numbers have been wildly inflated. The idea that you can put a price on taking a slide on the murder of somebody bothers me, whether it's 14 or 400. But part of the problem here is that essentially the deal is that we're going to bankroll, we're going to support Saudi Arabia's campaign against Iran. Saudi Arabia is going to buy the weapons from us. It just adds ever greater tension in the Middle East. And it seems as if that's the price of our signing off on kind of letting this pass. Just should know one final thing, Katie. I think this is generally the way countries are going. I learned yesterday that the Turkish President Erdogan, when he goes to the G20 summit in Buenos Aires, plans to meet with Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince. Turkey has been the greatest antagonist. It's the place where this crime happened. So Trump is not alone in basically letting this one go.
So the message around the world is you can kill somebody as long as you call them an enemy of the state, and then the U.S. won't care, and we won't be the moral authority any longer as we once have been?
Well, I looking at this, it's hard to imagine people taking the United States under this president seriously as a moral authority on anything. We have just basically walked away from that. He said it directly. America first. Everything else comes second. America first! Exclamation point. It's right there in the print of his statement.
I'm just not sure how this is America first, and that's not just me saying it. It's Rand Paul saying it, and it's a number of other Republican lawmakers saying it, including Democratic lawmakers. So what happens if Congress revolts? Can they push back and force the president's hand, Josh?
They can certainly do a lot to put more pressure, and we're already seeing lawmakers doing that. For instance, invoking the Global Magnitsky Act to say to President Trump, it's not enough for you to assess whether these 17 Saudis that the Saudis basically put on a list and handed to the U.S. and said, these are our fall guys, you can go ahead and punish them. It's not enough to say that they were part of this. You're going to have to make a formal determination about whether the U.S. believes that Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman ordered it, in line with what NBC News and basically every other major news organization in town is reporting the CIA believes about this case. So you're seeing Congress do what it can, but at the ultimate end of the day, it's the president that is going to determine whether we're going to continue to have a close relationship with the Saudis, whether he's going to be relying on them to help bring others along for his peace plan and his approach to Iran and everything else. And at the end of the day, the American people will have to judge whether they're okay with the president being this transactional about how it's going to choose who's its ally and who's its enemy.
Let me ask you this, John.
I want to weigh in real quick. I had some old footage that was recorded on a cassette tape. Sorry about the clarity of all that. I felt like that it was appropriate to put that on this particular message that I'm putting out right now. But what I want to say is it's time that the American people, as well as the President of the United States, quit winking at various lawlessness organizations or groups, regardless whether they be the Saudi Arabia group, regardless whether it be the people over in Indonesia or Honduras or Cuba, or some of the mass slaughterings that we see in other parts of the world, and say enough is enough pertaining to putting band-aids and basically giving a pardon towards people continuously doing this, especially whenever they do it to one of our own. I repeat, especially whenever they do it to one of our own. I don't think it's no hidden secret the fact that I personally was targeted in 1983 after that I had made mention that I was going to be the one that was going to meet the Antichrist during Ronald Reagan's administration. And that before the poison arrow struck the flesh of my skin, that I was going to vanish or disappear. That was whenever Gable was going to blow the trumpet, the dead in Christ was going to rise, and God the Father was going to return to gather up his elect from the four corners of the earth. And that was basically whenever, at first, I thought, my thinking was incorrect at that time, that the Great Tribulation period was going to begin. I was incorrect about the Antichrist, his actually self. According to Nostradamus, there will be 3 look-alike type Antichrists that will rise in the last days. We believe the first one to be Napoleon. We believe the second one to be Hitler. We believe here at the Windmill Ministries Missions that the third one is going to be somebody out of the royal Saudi Arabia family that will rise up towards demonstrating that in which what is predicted in the book of Revelations in regard to Nerod. Also, it speaks about Balak and Balaam there in Revelations. We believe that all this is all part of the old Persian Empire that will stick its nasty, ugly, dirty head out once more again towards the risation of a third world war before it is completed and defeated according to the Bible. I can only tell you what we believe here at the Windmill Ministries Missions, that this is all lining up with biblical Bible prophecy pertaining to the Saudis that basically masterminded 9/11 that are still at large. And I'm not the only one that believes that. There's a great deal of people in Congress that believes that, because if they didn't believe that, they never would have given a license to the victims of those who was part of the victimization of being victimized during 9/11 that occurred in New York City, of so many people's lives that got affected towards being able to sue the Saudi Arabia government. There's a great deal here to be discovered that goes all the way back to the fundamental foundations of the Bush administrations back in the 30s pertaining to the oil tycoons that become asphyxiated with the American profiteering from one generation to another. I made mention to my viewers, and I've told you before, if I tell you something that isn't correct or isn't so, I will gladly back up and rephrase from my statement. I said something to the degree that we believe out here that the Saudi Arabia people are so radical in their behavior that once they realize that we have turned against them, they liable to start burning up all their oil wells and deliberately trying to drive the price back up pertaining to OPEC. Saudi Arabia is not in charge of OPEC to the degree on a worldwide market scale like they was back in 74 and in the early 90s. We now produce more oil out of the ground, natural resources pertaining to crude oil, than any other country in the world. So we are the ones that holds all the cards pertaining to the driving of the prices either forward or backward in that market. In that market. It was in 2008 or 2009, I don't remember for sure. It was about 10 years ago. I remember whenever the market got driven up to the point that people was literally paying $4 and $5 a gallon here in the Midwest for fuel to go into their automobiles, to the point that people was slowing down on interstates that was ordinarily doing 75 and 80. Now they was doing 50 and 55 to be able to save money on saving gas, because that's the very thing that drove America off into its great bubble burst in 2008 after we got hit by the Saudis in 9/11, September the 11th, 2001. Everything has changed since then. And now transparency has beginning to unfold towards just exactly who's doing what to who. And I promise you, the Saudi Arabia government is not for the American people. They may say that they are, pertaining to trying to be one of our allies. They're not our ally, per se, whenever it comes to the rubber meeting the road. They have always been for themselves. They have always created that environment of their ideology pertaining to the Sharia law, pertaining to the Muslim movement, pertaining to supporting various terrorist groups. They are, in fact, the very disease that has helped to contaminate the world pertaining to their ideology all over the world. And it's time that the American people stood up. And I think what you're watching right now is a open, full demonstration of that, in understanding that there was more to 9/11 other than bin Laden that was actually being used as a ploy, as a pawn for them to get what they wanted to achieve. What did they want to achieve? They wanted to cripple the American economy. We did not become $21 trillion in debt the way that we have because of adding all this extra security and flight marshals and all these cameras and all these different types of things that has costed us again and again and again. We did not get this way accidentally. That's what I keep trying to tell my viewers. We have been sabotaged. Now, the next question is this. Who sabotaged us? Who actually sabotaged us? Well, it's a little bit of all the above. Especially whenever you got China that's steadily stealing information from us and using it against us. Whenever they're basically taking about $400 billion from us every year. You've got other countries that are steadily manipulating their way into the American problem as far as us being upside down right now with our national debt. You've got people coming from Mexico and South America. We've got border problems that's costing us more money. Who do you think pays for those soldiers and the extra security down there on the southern border? We do. We pay for those things. Who pays extra every time they get an airplane ticket to supply extra security for walking through metal detectors and having flight marshals on every flight? Who pays for that? We do. If the American people does not wake up to this opportunity pertaining to actually going after the perpetrators that has caused so much ill will to the American people's lives, they may not get an opportunity again. In other words, this thing may boil and fester until we do go over that threshold, which I think, the way that I understand it now, this is my understanding, it's somewhere between $22 and $24 trillion is whenever we sure enough start going into black. We're already in the red. We're fixing to go over to the black. Whenever we go over to the black, that's whenever we sure enough have to start worrying about an actual assault upon our lives as far as some major entity thinking that they're going to be able to attack us and take that in which what we have. This is serious. This is probably one of the most serious things that has occurred in formation with 9/11 since Pearl Harbor got attacked. This is all leading into biblical Bible prophecy. And it really bothers me that we have a chief and commander that I thought was putting America first. But the writing is all over the wall, similar to the writing that occurred during the book of Daniel, pertaining to who's in behind this, but yet now he's being skeptical about making a prominent, professional decision in the American people's behalf, as well as the rest of the world's behalf, towards riddling the very axis of evil. If you're going to kill a snake, you don't kill it by cutting off its tail a chunk at a time. If you're going to kill the snake, you have to go after the head. You have to go after the hub, the axis of evil pertaining to where this ideology come from and who is behind this to begin with that declared war upon to our allies and declared war upon to our very country, our sovereign country here in the United States. This is as serious as it gets, folks, pertaining to having an adversary which is out to kill, steal, and destroy. Please listen to the rest of this, because I felt like once more it needed to be documented. That way we can do research on these things and figure out the right, proper way to go.
Two things at once? Can we both take a stand, a moral stand, and sanction and put a lot of pressure on an ally of ours to say we don't think this leader is appropriate, while also maintaining an alliance?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think this false dichotomy is one of the problems with the national conversation we're having about this right now. The president and Pompeo and others are basically saying, yeah, this is horrible, but it's not so horrible that we're going to throw our entire relationship with Saudi Arabia away. I don't hear anyone that's saying that we should cut off diplomatic relations with Saudi Arabia. There are steps in between totally cutting a country off and doing nothing to that government for participating in the murder of a journalist in a consulate. There are things we can do with our support for the coalition campaign in Yemen, with arms deals with the Saudis and other diplomatic steps short of a full end to the alliance that would show that the U.S. is saying this is not acceptable.
David, I want to take it one step further. Part of the president's justification is saying that Jamal Khashoggi wasn't an American citizen. He was living in Virginia. He was working for the Washington Post. Are you confident that if this happened to an American citizen, to an American overseas, that the president would have a different reaction?
I'm not confident. If it was expedient, if Trump's definition of U.S. national interests conflicted with the welfare of that American, I think the president has been pretty clear how he'd make the decision. I did find it troubling that Trump would sort of replay the accusations that the Saudis made against Jamal Khashoggi, which I believe are false, in justifying this decision. In the end, people make realpolitik decisions all the time. Other governments are doing similar things. As I said, Trump is not alone. But to buy into the kind of attack on this man who was murdered so cruelly, it's really troubling. And the phrase that both the president and Mike Pompeo used, it's a nasty world out there. You got to do what you got to do. It's almost it's a level of amorality in a presidential Secretary of State statement that I can't remember anything quite as cold-blooded as that.
I can't either. And of course, this doesn't just involve Khashoggi. I mean, we don't even bring this up enough, but there's questions about what we're doing in Yemen and how we're helping Saudi Arabia in Yemen and the innocent people that are getting slaughtered or blown up in Yemen, including children. It's a topic that we don't broach enough when we talk about Saudi Arabia, but we're going to have to do that another day. Josh Letterman and David Ignatius. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thanks, Katie.
And call it a Mississippi mea culpa, sort of. The Republican senator says she's sorry for that comment on public hangings, but only...
There you go. The people can make their own decision about... It's not just about one person. It's about what that person believed in and what motivated them to plan a hit squad towards taking that person out. And it's all related. Every bit of it is related around the assaults that we continue to keep, I hate to use the word harboring, but that's basically what we're doing. We're harboring the very people that continually keep assaulting us and saying it's okay. We're patronizing them. And to me, that's the most craziest, insane part about all this. is to think that you would patronize evil. This is not what our forefathers had set down and originally planned out pertaining to our rule of law. This goes against the free world. This goes against everything that our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and other independent fundamental beliefs is based around. This goes against every bit of that. This is much, much deeper than just somebody deciding to take out vengeance, a vendetta upon one particular person because they didn't like that person in some way or another. No, 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 no. The Saudis have messed up. And this time, they messed up enough in front of full view that everybody and their brother can look at it and say, uh-huh, so you are the ones who have been in behind the curtain the whole time towards bringing grief and despair and agony to all of us. Because you have to face it. Whenever 9/11 occurred here in America, it didn't just devastate people's lives here in America. Since then, we've seen a barrage of terrorism that has arisen all over, everywhere, towards relentless shootings and killings and blowing ups and this type of ideology. This just didn't affect us. This affected the whole world. And it needs to be looked upon in a magnifying glass by the whole world in identifying, so you're really the boogeyman. It's kind of like the same situation that I'm dealing with out here. We've got a whole group of people, because they either didn't understand me or they did understand biblical Bible prophecy, but they didn't want to see it fulfilled. For whatever reason, they started pointing their fingers at me towards saying that I was the boogeyman. I was the boogeyman. Similar to what they'd done to Jesus Christ back 2,000 years ago whenever his own people rejected him and looked a gift horse in the mouth, saying that Jesus was a boogeyman. Jesus was the boogeyman. I got news for you. Jesus wasn't a boogeyman. It was the people that had Jesus assassinated that was the boogeyman. And it's the same difference out here. Juby is not the boogeyman out here. It's the people that's pointing their fingers at Juby that's being the boogeyman. Because obviously they're either too narrow-minded or their whole spiritual concept is built around a worldly order instead of a kingdom order. What is Jesus' prayer? Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. They don't want the kingdom to come out here and hop in. Or Sedonia. Or the number 7 Beach Ridge, Northwest Tennessee area. And because they didn't want the kingdom to come, now look at where we're at 30 years later. Towards all the grief and despair and all the robberies and the divorces and the pornography and all the heartbreak as far as seeing our police officers slain in the streets and $21+ trillion and all our prison systems injected with criminals. It's these people that have become the monsters. It's the people like over there in Kenton, Tennessee, that had an opportunity to mentor one of their own in a proper form towards prepping him and propping him up the right way so that he could do what he needed to do according to the standards of the religious practices in this country. But what did they do? They throwed their hands up and said, we ain't going to have nothing to do with this guy. A matter of fact, whenever I was in jail in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. I wrote Terry Neal 3, possibly 4 different letters. And you know what kind of response I got from my brother in Christ? Supposedly in Christ? 0. 0 response I got from Mr. Terry Neal, the son of Leroy Neal, writing him letter after letter after letter. Please, could you respond back? I don't know if he took the letters and threw them away. I don't know if he took the letters and read them and got his jollies off. I don't know if he took the letters and brought that much more indignation that he felt like that he was being treated wrongly or something. I don't know. I just know that good, sound Christian people do not respond and react to somebody that's going through a grievous situation towards being incarcerated by writing them a letter and then throwing it to the side and never responding to it. In addition to the way that they have spread gossip all over this whole area towards Juby's the Antichrist, Juby's the Antichrist, or Juby is psychologically, emotionally, chemically imbalanced. Psychologically, emotionally, chemically imbalanced. And the whole time, what did Jesus say? What did Jesus say? He said, for they would come in the form, being disguised, that they would come in the form of being and looking like sheep, but inwardly they would be nothing but raging, ravening wolves. That's what I got to say to the Neal family and to other families around here that has created this monster in their own hearts and in their own minds. Do I have to express the grief and how it makes me feel whenever I ride around in this neighborhood and I see little children, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, 12 years old, that as soon as they identify my automobile, regardless whether I'm in a truck or I'm in my car, and of course the other day I was driving my brother's vehicle and I thought the whole neighborhood was fixing to come unwound. But do I have to express to you how it makes me feel to see little children run like a bunch of munchkins and hide in behind the house or hide in behind a car or hide in behind a tree because they've identified, oh, it's Juby, it's Juby, it's the boogeyman, it's the boogeyman. These are the hypocrisy lies that have been spread from generation to generation. Now, give or take about 3 different generations. I got news for the Ridgeway family. You have failed. Take your demons somewhere else because they're not going to be able to succeed in their assignment out here. I got news for the Ridgeway family and the Sheffield family and other families, including the Neal family. Take your demons somewhere else because you're not going to be able to accomplish what you've set out to do. The people over in the Middle East looked the gift horse in the mouth and spread malicious lies about a good man by the name of Jesus Christ. Today, we see the punishment and the penalty for doing that. There's not hardly an area nowhere over in that area to where it's not some sort of bloodshed, some sort of ruckus, some sort of uprising of some crazy ideology that some occult leader has spread. And now you see Jerusalem accomplished with armies. All right? Go back into the Bible. Read the scriptures in the red pertaining to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. What did Jesus say whenever you shall see Jerusalem accomplished with armies? Jesus said to know that you are at the end of the door, the end of society as we know it. But before we actually walk through that threshold, according to biblical Bible prophecy, He will pour out His Spirit upon all flesh, to where their sons and their daughters will prophesy, and that we will see the meek inherit the earth one last final time before the true Antichrist, false prophet, comes into an existence. The true one. The absolute 110%, without a shadow of a doubt, Antichrist that will come onto the scene, that will force people to take the literal mark 666. And it will be a literal mark, like a brand. And it will either be in the top of your head or in your forehead, just like the Bible talks about. It won't be a chip. It won't be a plastic card. It won't be a chip inside of a card. It will actually be a brand. This is another misconception that probably the Pentecostal people has spread out towards saying, oh, we've already taken the mark by taking the Social Security number. I've heard so much crazy talk out here pertaining to a bunch of superstitious people. The Homo sapien race is almost at the point of becoming distinct because of this. And if you don't believe me, hang around. Coming near a neighborhood near you, just as the Walmart slogan, I guarantee you, if He cannot cure that society, He will cure. He will kill that society. He will bring remorse, distress, infliction, sorrow, great misery upon to that culture if He cannot cure this brainwashing effect that has occurred because of the enemy, your adversary, Satan, now in the flesh, over in Saudi Arabia. Once more, good luck to all of us. It just gets a little deeper and a little deeper every time I turn the news on. Shalom. Happy New Year. And the Golden Jubilee.